Hello and welcome to another Max Chroma tutorial video. In this video, I'll be showing how to create the various layers in the previous video showing my actions for Photoshop, the Max Chromograph HCWB actions. I'm going to show you guys some of the understanding behind the HWB color model and what I call the HCWB color model. And I'm going to quickly just go through how to generate the layers or the masks of these various parts. Now I'll leave future videos to go over the HWB model itself and in-depth technical details about this. But basically, if you see how some color pickers work already, even though this says right here HSB, this is actually an HWB triangle. So looking at this file that I've set up, and one thing that I have to show you guys first before I get into this is something about using Photoshop CC 2019. You want to be sure to change one of the settings if you're encountering some of these bugs that have been there. There's a bug while I was creating this file that I noticed, and it has to do with drop shadows. And if I go and double click, set a drop shadow on this, you'll see that when I'm zooming in and zooming out, to which I've also set the zoom to be my mouse wheel, I find that to be easier. Zooming out, it doesn't change the drop shadow. However, normally working with Photoshop CC 2019, there is something under performance. It's normally unchecked to say legacy compositing. They changed something about the way they composite everything in the layers for your view. And you see that right there, changing that setting. Now the drop shadow is distant and cut off. And if I zoom in, however, it changes back to what it should be. Zoom out and it jumps and gets cut off. I'll hit print screen and take a screenshot of that, make a new file, paste, and zoom in, and you can see that that's not correct. So I looked online, and the way to still work with the CC 2019 version and eliminate some of those bugs, there's also some bugs with the color blend modes, which I don't use down here, hue, saturation, color, luminosity, but apparently there's some bugs with that as well. So my recommendation, first off, if you're using CC 2019, to take care of that issue, you go to your preferences, performance, turn on legacy compositing. So maybe until they really clear out all the bugs with the new compositing engine, which is faster, we're just going to have that off in my version, and that fixes that. Okay, so this file right here, I have this graphic set up over a background color, which I'm going to turn off when working with this, because that's my transparency. Even though I'm working with this, there's a background just to help it so it's visible while teaching. So what is this? This is a triangle that's blending from a full color hue angle of 0, and we can look at that and see that it shows hue angle 0. And again, the hues go around a circle of 360 degrees. So if I raise this up, you'll see yellow is at 60 degrees, green is at 120, cyan is at 180 degrees, royal blue is at 240, magenta is at 300. We'll get to the other hues in future videos. And again, right over here, you can see how that goes around a circle. Okay. So the hue angle is something that's present under all of these colors. Okay, so even down here, the hue angle is still 0. Even here with very gray, red, it's still 0 angle, still red hue. That is different from the percentage of the chromaticity of that hue. And it goes 100% to 0% when it goes towards white, towards black, or towards gray, anything going towards this neutral tone. So there'll be a layer mask that I'll generate that is the chroma. Okay, the hue is extracted underneath all of that. It would be red. Okay, whiteness, 100% whiteness at this corner of the triangle, meaning that the mask should go in this direction. White would fade out towards black, and it would fade out towards the chroma. It would also keep fading out as it goes towards all of this chroma and shade area. Okay, along the side here, the chromas will be shaded towards blackness. So when you're adding black, you're shading a color. When you're adding white, you're tinting a color. And anything between white and black is just a neutral gray. Okay, it shows up as though it's in the red block here, but really neutral colors have no color angle in them. They just read a 0 value, but you don't want to confuse that with being red hue. There really is no color content. There's no saturation in the HSB model, and there's no chroma in the HCWB model. Okay, so what I'm going to do to make this a relatively quick video is just go through what the layers are actually extracting to get to the hue, the chroma, the whiteness, and the blackness layer masks, and how I perform this within Photoshop's tools and blend modes. Some things I basically discovered over the years, some little tricks to get to these masks, because there is no default way in Photoshop to get to some of these masks. Some of them are relatively easy. So let me turn off this background layer and work with just this layer right here. I'm going to right-click, duplicate the layer. The easiest one to get is the blackness. So let's call this just the blackness. I'll go up to Image, Adjustments, Black and White, and I want to set the default to maximum white. Okay, so every hue is going to be 100% lightness. Essentially, it changes the lightness of these. Okay, we're working with just the red hue on this object. Obviously, I could set it to be 0% black, or I can change that hue to be 100% white. So we'll start off with it that way. Hit OK. This is actually my blackness mask. So you can see how it has 50% in the gray, 50% in the shade. It fades all the way out towards that tinting section. All right, so it's this part of the triangle here. Okay, and if we look in the actions, I'm going to take this off of button mode. I'm going to go into this action that says blackness. You can see it duplicates the current layer, sets the current layer to be named blackness, performs the black and white mode with everything set to 100, and then it just moves that layer to the top. Okay. Now, the next is the whiteness, and there's two ways to go about it. I'm going to duplicate this layer, call it whiteness, and I can go up to Image Adjustments, Black and White, and now I could just say maximum black. So everything in that red section, and this would happen for all the other hues if we're looking at triangles of all the other hues as well, it's going to make all of those colors go to black. And what does that leave us with? A mask fading towards white. However, I'm going to Image Adjustments, invert this to get the mask as would appear the blackness mask. So it's 100% black where it is white, but there's really no absolute rule as to how you should have that. Technically, this is the whiteness mask with white being there at 100%. Everything else fades out. There's another way to get to this. If I right-click, duplicate layer, we'll call this whiteness 2. And I can invert first. So I can go Image Adjustments, invert. And then I can do essentially the same thing I did to get the blackness. So we'll go Adjustments, Black and White, maximum white. And that's the mask where 100% black, it's basically a positive instead of a negative. Okay, now the next one we're going to do is, let's say, the chroma. Okay, the chroma is relatively easy to get, and there's a few ways to go about it. For me, the simplest way is you can actually just combine, and this is a technique I'm going to teach in a lot of videos that is very powerful. There's different ways to combine these masks to get to the other masks, or the extractions we've got here. Some people call these color separations. It really depends on what you're using them for. Okay, so with this being the chroma, I've already extracted the blackness and the whiteness. The chroma is actually everything except for the whiteness and blackness. Okay, now if I take this whiteness, I want to make sure that it is the inverted one. Image adjustments, invert. And what we're going to do is duplicate this. We're going to call it Chroma Method 1. Okay, we'll go to the blackness. We'll duplicate that. Call this Chroma Method 2. Well, it's still Chroma Method 1, Layer 2. And I'll move this above the other. And essentially what we'll do is take the whiteness extraction and the blackness extraction. I'm going to take the blackness and set it to a blend mode of linear burn. This combines both of those masks, or both of those extractions, into one, and I just have to go layer, merge down. And if I want this mask to be where the chroma is showing as black, I will do Control I, or Image Adjustments, Invert. And so this is the chroma. You can now see how it goes 100% to 0 where there's white, to 0 where there's black, anything that's neutral. Okay, there's another way to do this. I can basically just take the original, I'll duplicate this, original copy, and we can take the blackness, put that over this layer, but I'm going to duplicate it first. Okay, blackness copy. And really this is Chroma Method 2. Okay, Chroma Method 2. What I'm going to do is take the blackness over the original and set the blend mode to difference. Okay, you can see we're getting close to the same thing. If I do layer, merge down, and then do what I performed before with the blackness, I'm going to say image adjustments, black and white, maximum white. And you have to be careful if you're recording actions and you use a preset, it's going to have the preset located on your particular system. So oftentimes if I'm recording actions with this, I'll change this to 100% and make sure it says custom. Okay, so that I can just do Control I, invert. That's Chroma Method 2. Okay, so two ways to get to really the same thing. All right, so we've got the original, the blackness, the whiteness, the chroma. How do we get to the hue underneath everything? Now in the first video I put out with the HSB color layers free action, I showed how you can go to filter, other, HSB, HSL to get the hue. That doesn't produce a hue layer that is 100% accurate. There's a little bit of destruction. It really depends on whether you're an 8-bit or 16-bit, and it's a little more difficult. I found a method that is actually easier. Let me go ahead and right-click, duplicate this original. We're going to say hue angle extraction 1. Okay, and we're going to use the blackness layer to do this. So we'll duplicate blackness for hue angle extraction. Let's move this right above that. And this is another blend mode I discovered, and a lot of these things started off many, many years ago. I was tinkering around in the work that I did with color extraction for graphic design, for printing, and I found that some of these blend modes were giving me things I didn't think were possible. So when I took a black and white extraction over the original and I set the layer blend mode to divide, and essentially these are just very simple mathematical operations. Some of them are more complex, but add, multiply, subtract, divide, difference, which is, sort of similar to subtraction. What's the difference between the two? Essentially, these are just basic math operations you're performing on the pixels of one layer over another. And when you use the same kind of layers, same information, but we've changed parts of it, this is basically just going to take all of these RGB values and divide them over the other one. So this layer divided by that layer, and you'll see that everything under the shades has now become 100% red. Let's go ahead and merge this down. Okay, merge that with the other. So this is hue angle extraction part 2. So if that worked to remove all of the blackness information and extract all the hue, the next logical step for me was, well, I can do that where things fade over black. This is all fading over white. How do I do that part? How about I just image adjustments, invert again? So invert. Okay, now all of this is black over the hue of cyan. Cyan is the opposite hue from red, but we're going to ignore that. We're going to go ahead and duplicate this hue angle extraction part 2, blackness from part 2. And we're going to have to take this and now do image adjustments, black and white, like we're getting the blackness out of there, maximum white. And now if I take this layer over the other one and do divide again, you'll see we've extracted all of that hue under all of the whiteness and blackness. Let's just layer merge down and then image adjustments invert back to the original hue. What was black is 100% black. Anything that's neutral has been forced to white, and all of these other pixels, if I look at the original graphic, underneath all of this stuff, even if it was extremely faded, it still had 1% saturation of red in it. Okay, so red underneath all of that. And again, that's the hue angle, different from the chroma percentage. Okay, and how do I see this chroma as if it's in red? Well, there's a couple of ways to do that. First, I could just put a color overlay of red, set to screen. So that would appear as the chroma in its own color. So let's duplicate that. Chroma in color. We can take this one, just delete that layer effect. Okay, this one I can make a new layer, merge them together. Okay, and yeah, again, that's what these actions are doing here. So let's go and look at hue. Duplicate layer, set current layer, duplicate, sets it to black and white mode, sets it to difference, duplicate, sets it to divide. There's actually a couple of different ways to do it. One of the ways is using difference first. The way I did it was the divide method twice. In this action, I'll show you that there is another method for the hue. So in this action, you can do what I did there. So I take the blackness and I'll set it to the difference instead. So difference, and then I only have to divide once. Okay, image, I'll duplicate this, image adjustments, black and white, maximum white. Then I can take this and divide it over the other one. Okay, so you get to the same result, different approach. Okay, looking at that original, let's say the chroma in color, duplicates, sets it to black and white, sets it to difference. Okay, creates a layer over that. It doesn't change. Actually, essentially the chroma in color, the chroma in grayscale, I achieved by taking the black and the white, setting the white to linear burn over the black. The method for chroma in color is to duplicate, or really just take this and the blackness, and we're going to say difference. And you can see we've got the chroma and color essentially. Let me duplicate this. Let's merge these together. And then all we have to do is invert, because this is black, I want it to be white. This is cyan, I want it to be red. So just Control-I, or Image Adjustments, invert. That's the chroma and color. Again, a couple different ways to get to the same result. Okay, and in this action, the chroma and grayscale, we've shown the whiteness, duplicate, set current layer, black and white. It inverts it. Blackness we showed first. Same things, just without the invert. Okay, now what about things like the tint, the shade, the gray, the tone? I'll save that for future videos. I'll just show one example of how I get to something like the gray. And for these HCWB automated modes, like the colorizers, the split to layers, the adjusters, and the control masks, again, this video is about 20 minutes. So I'm going to stop here, and I'll save how to create all those adjustments, how to merge these together and make them appear as the original in the other videos. A quick example would be, you can take the hue angle, or really the easiest would be the chroma and color, and then I'll move the blackness, duplicate that on top, and we would set this to linear burn. So there's, with just 2 layers, recreating the original. The blacks now blending over those 50% of chroma and 50% of black will make the 100% shade. Okay, 50% of black over the white will make the grays, and it produces all the other tones using linear burn. Okay. If you were to be using the hue angle, you would actually need to take the chroma and set it to screen to create the same thing, and then the blackness to linear burn. If you had the black over the hue angle and linear burn, it's not quite correct. You could do multiply, but you don't have the whitenesses in here. And if you try to put the whiteness in this way, I'll invert that, set it to screen, it's not quite correct in the tones. Okay, so there's some little bit of complexity to when you try to rebuild or recomposite the original with these layers. But there are ways to do it, and that's kind of the power behind all of the colorization. Okay, but let's say I'm just using the chroma and color and the blackness set to linear burn, blending mode. I can go to this, set a solid color layer. We'll call this Blackness Colorizer. And I want to actually change this to normal for the black, change this to screen. Okay, and I'll hold Alt so it's masked to that layer with the transparency. And if I control and group those two, this would be my blackness group. Okay, I have to set this whole group to be linear burn. Then I can now change the color of the black to any color I want. Okay. So again, that's just a beginning, an introduction into extracting these various hue, chroma, white, and black layers. And in my next videos showing the HCWB color range method that I've created, it's and also show how to create these colorizers like I just did with the blackness. That's some of the things you can do with these layers. Let me just show one more sneak peek. Let's say I wanted to get to what I have here in the original is the gray. There's a really great technique for me that works to get down into all of these extractions. And I'm going to take the blackness layer, duplicate that. Say blackness to create gray. We'll move that to the top. And then we're going to say duplicate the whiteness to create gray. Move that to the top. Okay, so we've got the blackness, the whiteness, and I'm going to make sure this is the inverted one. I'll set that to normal. And so there's a blend mode I can do between these two, and really, if you think about it, the gray is everywhere that the black and the white overlap each other. So if I have the whiteness layer showing as it's 100% black, like a positive, and I set this to a specific mode, lighten mode. Okay, screen mode sort of works. Linear dodge does not work if you have them as the exact extractions, but this is essentially taking the maximum of the two. So wherever they are both overlapping and have a maximum value. And this is essentially the gray. However, it's only showing as if it were 50% gray. To make it a mask, all I have to do is layer, merge down, duplicate the layer. Well, there's two methods at this point. I could go to image levels and select the black eyedropper and make that black, but that's not as accurate. There's some change in the mathematics going on in there as taking this and duplicating the layer. This is going to be grayness duplicate. This other layer is the grayness. And I'm going to set this to linear burn. Okay. Then we're going to do layer merge down. So this is the grayness. Now this will not actually work with the original blackness or whiteness. So in further videos going down into further extractions, I will show how to get to the tints, the shades, the tones, the grays, and more, and other hues as well. But again, these actions are actually modules of a much larger action set that I'm going to be putting out soon, and it goes into a lot of powerful techniques that you can get to the colorizing of all of these various parts of your original image. I'm going to conclude this video now, and I will be putting this file up online for free, so you can play around with it following the video, learning what you've learned in this video. You can use the same test file to try to get the same extractions. And thank you for watching. Thank you for the encouragement for me to keep making more videos. I will try to keep them as concise as possible and organized. Okay, take care and have a great new year.